Section 1. Development of editing. In-camera editing. George Méliès, A Trip to the Moon. This is one of the first films that he released in 1896. Before he started making his own films, he was influenced by the Lumiere brothers' short films and the camera that they made and using called the cinematograph. But he made his own camera and called it the animatograph. In this film, he uses the techniques of jump cuts, dissolves, and fades, which these techniques were discovered by him, and this can be seen in this film. Alfred Hitchcock wrote, the French critic turned filmmakers considered him as an author or an English artist, as they were influenced by his work that he put into his films. In this film, he uses the techniques of jump cuts, which is an alternative technique, as it's part of the montage. Because it was used to make the audience think of what was happening in the film. In the beginning, at 19 seconds, it fades slowly to show the first scene of this film, which was a location of the film. He uses the fading in a suitable way to make it more interesting. The purpose of these techniques and used in this film wrote by Hitchcock is to make the film more interesting for the viewers, and it also uses a linear technique to tell the story through different shots. Following action, shot variation. D.W. Griffith, Birth of a Nation. The technique he used and developed was cross-cutting. Cross-cutting and 180-degree rule. Cross-cutting is where it cuts between two different scenes that are happening at the same time, and the 180-degree rule was also developed by D.W. Griffith, where there's a line between two characters, but it must not be crossed at all because it will break continuity. The Great Train Robbery by Edwin S. Porter. Porter used the 180-degree rule, which was included match on action, where it keeps the focus on the action with the audience keeping their attention on what is going on in the film. This can be seen at 3 minutes 05, where the robbers are getting on the train. Also, in this film, the American Fireman, there's also a temporal overlap where the firefighters start to go down a pole, and it cuts to a long shot, and then there's a shot at the end of the pole, which the firefighters get off. This could be described as a mini flash. It was described as a mini flashback at the time. The purpose of this editing on Birth of a Nation, The Great Train Robbery, and the Life of the American Fireman is when there is rhythm and pace that adds to the film, but also creates drama. That creates drama, which makes the films more interesting to watch and more enjoyable for the audience. Manipulation of time and space. Multiple points of view. Hitchcock. Cycle. In the shower scene of Psycho, Hitchcock uses the montage technique of rhythmic and metric, and narrating is not stacked and Analog. Film and video. Film splicer. In the early cinema editing, the early pioneers had to be extra careful when cutting each scene, as they have to use the whole tape that contains footage, which they recorded, because if the pioneers make a mistake by cutting the wrong scene, then they'll have to start all over again, and asked to send the whole footage again. I had to send a whole new footage again. So it's important to be very careful, and it was very important to be careful when the cutting the footage. Linear editing, or tape to tape editing, was one way to edit videotapes. In the 1990s, non-linear editing computers became available to a whole new became open to a whole new world of editing's power and flexibility. But it was not received by everyone, which included editors, as it was plagued by issues of performance of it. Digital. Modern methods of editing, of using computers, which allows us to be more creative and add special effects, like softwares of Final Cut Pro. Since this type of technology has become available to use worldwide, where editors use footage to change order and different camera techniques, plus add effects, which could make a continuity on montage editing. The disadvantages of using this is that this technology where filmmakers use the special effects like translations that were breaking continuity and losing meaning in the film. Like, for example, in Hulk, Tarantino criticized this as it was too many transitions that made it look too comical for the film.